very much. So we will begin then. It's December 16th, 2020, and this is a meeting of the Forest Management Plan Advisory Committee. First item, well, I should first of all say our chair isn't here today, so you're stuck with me. I've had a one-year sabbatical, let's call it that, from this committee, and now I'm back. And I'm sad to say that I've forgotten all of the lingos and acronyms. I remember there were some terms that you guys just use and just throw them out there, and it was all new to me. So I'll have to take a period of time to get reacquainted, sadly, but I'm glad to be here. So I call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest of any kind anyone needs to make? I see none. If one does arise during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. And we're on to item number 3, which is reports. And I guess we're going to be hearing from Sarah on the Forest Management Plan Advisory Committee. The Forest Management Plan update. Sarah?
Thank you. Thank you. So can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay. Just a reminder, I know that I said this in the email that I sent out to everybody. This meeting will be recorded, so just be aware of that, just in case we get off on a little rabbit hole or something. But anyways, my report or my presentation today is going to be brief. I'm going to hope that you all have had a chance to read my report. And basically, the report is out of the consultation that we have had. Some of you were able to attend the public open house that we had for the plan, and we didn't really get a ton of feedback. I mean, maybe that means we got it right the first go around, I'm not sure. But anyways, I just wanted to go over briefly a few things that we wanted to discuss today and a few things that we're modifying. So without further ado, there's a few things that have happened obviously since we met last. And one of those is the Mountain Lake Forest property has been given to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So that's not part of our repertoire anymore. So that will be removed from the management plan final draft when it is brought forward. As well as there's a few of the forest properties that we have decided to rename. And there's a report that's going forward in January to the committee of a whole and obviously to council that will update some of those names provided council is satisfied with the options that we have chosen. Some of the names of the existing forests were rather, well, generic, or they were based on a road name, which from an emergency management purpose, it would have been challenging for somebody to find it. In addition to that, there was a couple of forests on the same road. One had the road name, one had a different name, so it could be very confusing in an emergency situation. So there was a need in that capacity, and then we just wanted to maybe update a few of them so that they had more of a representation of the area in which they were located. So that's coming forward, but that's another update that will be done that we don't necessarily need your feedback on, but it's more of an FYI with that. So the next part of my presentation, and this is probably where we will spend the most time having our discussions, there was basically 3 questions that came out of the consultation that we had. I'm going to go through these, I'm going to finish my report, and then we'll come back and hopefully have a discussion if that's the way that the committee sees that that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, we can discuss it right now. But the questions basically that we need help with today to finalize the draft and get your feedback on are, is there merit in allowing enterprises in forest properties through an agreement, such as beekeeping or maple syrup or anything akin to that? What we're hoping with this is to keep any kind of wording in it, if yes is the desire of the committee, what we're hoping is that any verbiage that we do include in the plan is broad, but basically gives us the ability to enter into an agreement through our legal services department and agreement staff so that they can help us accomplish that. If it's not something we want to include, then that's fine as well. It's just we kind of need a little bit of direction in that regard. The second one is foraging, and I've done a bit of research on this, and some counties and municipalities do allow for this, others do not. Some allow for it outright, some allow for it for personal use only. So we're just looking for a little bit of direction as to whether or not that's something that we want included in our, or to allow it on our forest properties as well. And then finally, following our last public consultation, the open house, we had some consultation with the Métis Nation of Ontario, and they had discussed a number of things, but one of those things was if there would be consideration for a land acknowledgement for the Métis, and we wanted to expand on this and obviously recognize First Nations as well. And so we wanted the committee's input on that, if we should include a land acknowledgement for the Métis and First Nation in some capacity. Now I have, we're waiting for some wording from the Métis Nation. They were hoping to provide us some prior to the meeting, but they haven't had that finalized for us yet. And I've also reached out to the First Nations. I know this is something that we have discussed at past meetings, so I think that it's something that we may want to consider, but again, I just wanted to allow the committee to have that discussion and determine that. So those three questions are the questions that we're looking for some direction on today. And actually, I think that is the end of my my presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back there, and Warden, if you want to, well, I got Vice Chair Warden, I don't know what we call you at this meeting, but if you maybe want to facilitate some discussion on this, because that's basically all I had, and that's where we need the direction today. So I don't know if you want me to, or if you want to, it's completely up to you, but I'll leave these questions up here so that we can see what they are and go from there. Oh, you're muted.
Sarah, I'm happy that you would facilitate the discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just kind of open the floor right now and start with our first question. If anybody needs further explanation as to what we're talking about, what this means, you know, feel free to ask those questions as well. But basically, the first question that we want some direction on is, do we see any merit in allowing enterprises like beekeeping or maple syrup, and those were the two examples that came up during this process, but I'm sure there's other ones, as part of the forest management plan, or is that something that we don't want to consider?
Councillor Campbell, go right ahead.
Yeah, my concern would be the tapping for maple syrup. I know we're in the business ourselves, and I know a bush is not worth near the money if it's been tapped. That would be my only concern there.
And can I expand on that a little bit? You forestry experts that we have here, what does tapping of a hardwood sugar maple do to the value of it if we're trying to, you know, manage our forests? Is that something that would align with that, or is that something that maybe would be a detriment to that?
Personally, I think it doesn't. It's sort of a little. It does affect the quality of the wood, the butt log, to some degree, but it sort of gets blown out of proportion how much it affects the actual market value of the, you know, of the wood. I just made a couple notes here quick. Like, you know, what I tell people is, like, I think it's has potential to maybe produce extra revenue to be put into, you know, like this invasive species work that Lee brought up. But I think it's important to maybe go through each of the bushes, if that was to happen, and identify a number of high quality trees per hectare to be not tapped, like to be allowed to grow. Like, I think it's certainly an option that could be discussed that could actually help on a larger scale tackle some of the issues that and in particular the invasive species stuff, because there's some revenue that could be seen there.
Sarah, can I weigh in there for a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. When we did an FSC audit in of a sugar maple stand that I'd harvested back in, I don't know, 2017 or 2018, Jim Hendry, who was the certification coordinator, brought up to me that it's possible. He actually, and I'm about to email this document to you, that there's a license agreement. This is a template for essentially for tap rentals. Like it's, I don't know, I think it's somewhere around like 25 to 50 cents a tap or something. But you know, there's a document here, and then I think you would just have to look at the economics of the size of the sugar bush and what sort of revenue you'd be able to get from the sugar maple tapping over time versus any sort of depleted value that may come out of that. And then other things that you gotta think about, like, are they just tapping there, or would they be boiling on site, and where's the firewood going to come from to do that? Or, you know, are they just extracting the sap and taking it away? And then also, well, I guess if it's a local company that's doing it, then you're not taking anything away from the local economy. And if the county's not doing it themselves, then they're not really competing with that local market as well. But you're just providing more material for a local person to utilize.
And so it doesn't affect anything with regards to FSC based on that conversation that you had with Jim Hendry?
No, as a matter of fact, they're in full support of it. Some of the local landowners, like in just south of Walkerton, I can't remember the name of the family that does it, but they are one of the local, like, private landowner FSC bushes, and yeah, FSC goes wild for stuff like this. They you know, alternative uses and of forest and you know, value added revenues. And yeah, and with the staining that happens to the butt log, there is a limited value added market for that. You know, there can be sometimes there's flooring or furniture or whatever that's made from that stained wood.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this question? So what I'm hearing is potentially this is something that we would want to include as a probable allowance within the forest management plan, and I think what we would do is we would keep it very broad, so that when anyone came in, we would just we would have some kind of, basically, if somebody's interested, we would address that through our legal department and work out an agreement with them. And Kevin, you said you're going to send me something with a rental agreement that might be a template for something if we did ever have this like these two requests we've actually had come in as during this process, and that's why they've been highlighted. But I'm sure there's other things akin to this that we haven't contemplated at this time, so we want to keep the wording broad. But if I've misunderstood that, or if everyone seems to think that that is where we want to go, that's fine. I will include some wording we'll work with Grace Obel to update the wording to include something so that there is permissions to do this.
Yes, Sarah, I'm wondering if there are any other opportunities beyond beekeeping and tapping.
I'm sure there are. I just, this is what happens. We think we figure them all out and then something else comes up. I don't know if you other forestry staff have had anything else similar or akin to this that might come up. I don't know. There's new things that come out of stuff every day, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, Sarah, if I could just add one last thing about the tapping, is that this would be worth having a conversation with Jim Hendry about, rather than just hearing it third hand from me, because I do believe that this is common practice in Eastern Ontario, and there are several community forests, either conservation authorities or counties that may participate in this. I'm just not sure which one, but like I think like South Nation Conservation Authority might do it.
As part of my, if it is the desire to include this, then I can, as part of my figuring out what kind of wording I want to use, I'll follow up with Jim as well, just to kind of get his input as well.
Brian?
One of the things is that we've only got a few properties that would be suitable for maple syrup, in that the quality of the hardwoods isn't great, and we wouldn't risk ruining some veneer logs. Like, I wouldn't suggest we allow tapping in Pretty River or Lily Oak or even the Colapore. So, but it would have to be property specific.
Okay.
Brian's had his hand up. Brian, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, back to my first comment. I know we have sold bushes ourselves, and that's the question number one that the logger will ask you: has the bush been tapped? So I'm still concerned that there's a loss of value here.
Sarah, this is Rebecca. I have my hand up, just because you guys can't see me. I was just wondering, this is maybe a question for Lee and Brian. Does tapping the tree open it up to disease? And then I have another question. Will this require inspections, and would that fall on Lee or Grace Obel staff, do you think?
I guess that's
I
probably.
can answer.
Okay, go ahead, Lee.
The tapping of trees has the potential to open them up to disease, but due to the time of year, there's very little infectious material floating through the air. So it's kind of limited. I've tapped trees for, I don't know, 50 years, and I don't see any damage through infection over those years. As for the inspection part, my opinion would be that prior to any tapping, we'd have to identify which trees would be able to be tapped, and that would be coming on, I would say.
Okay.
For 50 years, you look pretty good.
Sarah, are you moving on to question 2, I guess?
I guess I just want to be clear. So we have had a few members that have raised concern. I just want to make sure that, like, the general consensus is that this is something we want to consider. I don't think we need to vote, but I think we need to, I just want to make sure that I am fulfilling the wishes of the committee to include what we want to include. So,
it would seem to me, Sarah, that in light of Councillor Gamble's comments and concerns, maybe we want to find out what that potential impact to the value of the tree really is. I'm not sure that we have that answer here.
Yeah, if I might, Chair Hicks, this is Randy here. I wonder if we put in wording to say that it's it may be possible, but it sounds like it's going to depend on, the current existing forest conditions on any one of our properties, as well as subject to inspection by qualified staff like Lee and others to make sure that it's going to work before we contemplate putting out, for example, a tender or an RFP for someone to tap those trees, just to make sure that if there are going to be any impacts that are identified, we can do that as part of that review, and then offer that opportunity up if we feel that risk is minimal.
Reasonable, Council Gamble?
Yeah, it's just a concern I have.
Sure.
All right, the second question, does the county want to permit foraging in county forest properties? And I suppose to expand on that, if the answer is yes, in what capacity? Is it open to, enterprises, or is it a personal use, or is it a absolutely not? So
Sarah, I'm going to ask an innocent question here. I really don't know what the answer is. What's the difference between foraging and hunting?
Foraging is, it's an interesting question, because I know that the Métis consider them one and the same, but foraging more deals with plant species as opposed to the animal species that we would qualify as a hunt, like a non-Métis or a non-First Nations person would hunt, I think would be an animal as compared to, I know that the Métis have their hunting or their card that allows for both of the uses. So to clarify that, it's more related to plant species.
Mushroom.
Sarah, I would vote no, just for the record. I don't know, I just feel with like the whole species at risk aspect that I think it opens up an issue there. And then it's like, how do you really regulate it once you have an agreement with someone and then word gets out? So I would be inclined to say no.
Sarah, my opinion is that I would say yes. In terms of county forests, that these are they're not wildlife preserves, they're not nature preserves. It's a working forest, and in terms of community forests, they're designed to be like a multi-use facility, and so when you start restricting activities such as foraging, then you have to enforce that, and sort of what capacity of enforcement do you have? And you also have to think like, well, to what extent is foraging actually happening? But I do agree that I think that it should just be to restrict it to personal use. And so like I don't know if a commercial grade mushroom picker would be doing that anyways. And then the one issue I do see is like Becca was saying with species at risk, if you do have something like ginseng growing, that is illegal to harvest. But then like if you restrict, like if you know that you have ginseng in a forested tract, and then you say, well, you can't, there's no foraging allowed in this tract, then that kind of puts a big shining sign on saying, well, hey, then there's probably something in here that shouldn't be picked.
Yeah.
Sarah, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I'm coming from the snowmobile world, and so I certainly don't have the base of knowledge that many others have on the call with regard to forestry and vegetation. But just a concern I have knowing what our relationship is like with Grey County and some of the conservation authorities, when we go in to build and maintain snowmobile trail, we have a very extensive land use agreement, which you and I have worked on for a number of years, and it dictates what we can do, what we can't do, what we have to do, what we should be doing, what the county should be doing. So I guess my concern around this would be, these are individuals. So when I look back at our previous question about the beekeepers and the maple syrup tapping, I believe that the county would probably enter into an agreement similar to what they do with the local snowmobile clubs, with all of those things in place. So you would be mitigating your risk. And hopefully, you know, there would be a revenue stream there. So any resources that would have to be put forward by the Conservation Authority or the county to monitor what was going on would be able to be covered through a revenue stream and through that agreement. If we're looking at foraging, because it seems to be more individual based, the county and or the Conservation Authority would be assuming all of that risk and all of the cost of managing the resources, because there just is not another body to sign that agreement and take that on. So just from a pure cost perspective and a risk mitigation perspective, that would be my concern with foraging.
The other thing, just from a county staff perspective, so we've had this chat internally based on some requests we received, is we have general guidance within another document called the Recreational Trails Master Plan that, you know, when you're using our forests as a member of the public, we expect you to stay on the trails. And we just wonder if we start opening up to foraging, if we're going to see more people go off trail and go deeper into the forest, or parts of the forest we might not otherwise want them traveling on. Now, in that sense, however, the same argument could be made for hunting too. You know, we're certain that not all hunters stay on trails in that regard, but that's just one of the other things as staff we had concerns about, in addition to some of the comments raised about species at risk, and about, you know, if you did make a rule here, how would you ever regulate it or enforce it?
Yeah, like I think that foraging is relatively speaking one of the most benign things that you can do in a forest, other than perhaps bird watching. And you know, it's generally done by, you know, septuagenarians and people out looking for leeks, wild leeks, so they can make soup. Compared to other activities like, you know, ATVing and snowmobiling, where you're driving a high-powered piece of machinery through the forest that has the ability to, you know, someone could break their arm, right, Jesse? So that can happen. So I just don't think, like, I understand that from a county's perspective, particularly Bruce County, that had to go through a big court case because of mountain biking, that definitely liability is always something to be thinking about. But you know, I think we just got to be, I think encouraging people to use these facilities rather than discouraging is more the line that we should be going on, and just put a little perspective on what it is actually that's going to happen here. Like for when COVID happened, we closed down the trail system, but we didn't actually close the forest. So people were allowed to actually still continue into the forest. And you know, I particularly would like to see people go off the beaten path a little bit more. That's just my perspective, though.
Another thing that I didn't mention is this use is probably already occurring in the forests now. We wouldn't know unless, you know, there was some significant destruction as a result of it. And obviously, as Kevin has mentioned, it's not a relatively destructive activity. And I think those that are doing it know what they're looking for and would be cognizant of other species around them. I'm not for or against one position on this. I do think if it's something we want to consider I think it would be something that we would only want to consider, or stipulating at least, that it's for personal use only. But I'm not sure. We seem a little divided here, so I'm just trying to get a little bit more conversation going, maybe.
Well,
Sarah,
oh, go ahead, Lee.
All right. So as you said, we know it's going on already. On what scale, we don't know. But so by including it in the management plan, does that mean we're going to write up agreements with these people so that because as you say, we know it's already going on.
I think the intent when I wrote my report and when I was asking this question was, and to separate it from the one that we previously just discussed, was to not enter into an agreement. As it is right now, we don't have any direction on it, and we know that it is occurring, and we've had some inquiries about it recently. So it feels like it's something that we need to have some sort of direction on what that is. That's what we're trying to determine. If it's just a statement that says we do permit it on a personal use level, and maybe we stipulate that you don't take more than you need, or I don't know. I could figure out some wording for it. But maybe there's some wording in that capacity that we could include. I think that's kind of, I wasn't anticipating the need to enter into an agreement with everybody that wants to go out and pick leeks or grab a puffball or whatever it is they're looking for. So, because that would be quite onerous, and I don't think that the people that are doing it would even know that they would need to do that or need to ask if they had any requirements to do that.
Councillor Gamble?
Yeah, I like Sarah's idea. I don't want to create a whole lot of work for people that we don't even have on staff. So I support the idea that, yeah, I don't support the idea that we just shut it down. I think a personal use idea is good. Thank you.
Yeah, just one last thing here. Something like this is generally complaint driven, and so if you have it written into your forest use bylaw that it's for personal consumption, and then you get reports of so and so being out there harvesting whatever for sale, or you find out about this, then that's how you can go after it, and then you have the ability to issue a Part 1 summons for violating the forest use bylaw.
So does that sound like a reasonable compromise, Sarah, that it is permitted for personal use, but we are not going to go to the level of actually permitting it?
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me, if that's the general consensus of the committee.
Is there anyone who isn't comfortable with that strategy? Okay.
Okay, and the final one that we wanted to discuss today was, should we include a land acknowledgement for the Métis and First Nations?
Sarah, maybe I can start off on this one. I would probably say that we would want to make sure that any acknowledgement in this regard fits in with a broader plan that the county might have with respect to Métis and First Nations acknowledgement. I know that request has been made in the past, but I would think that, for example, we don't start off our meetings with an acknowledgement, and some places do. I know that we've been asked in the past to develop a policy, and I believe that staff have given some thought to it. But I would think that if we were going to do something here, it would have to be part of a broader countywide acknowledgement, I guess, policy or plan.
No, Mark Mariash, who wasn't able to attend today, has been in support of this, and I believe it was in the minutes from the last meeting that he had raised it as something we could consider. So I know he would be supportive of it in whatever capacity. And certainly I can look into the county position on this sort of acknowledgement to determine whether or not it's something that we can include in the document, or if it's something that we include in another capacity.
Yeah, this is something I would suggest we bring to Kim's attention. I know that she has had her mind on it. You know, she's got plenty on her plate, but this is something that's not new for her, and I would hesitate to do anything at this level without having, in my view, a broader plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and speaking to that and chatting with Kim on this topic, she felt that for sure, if there was going to be acknowledgement, it needs to encompass all First Nations, Métis, Indigenous communities in our area. And I think the point is well taken, Chair Hicks, in terms of making sure it fits in with a corporate policy direction around land acknowledgement. And so I think that's a really valid point.
Anybody else have anything to add to this subject? I'm seeing no. Okay, Sarah, is there anything else that you need input on?
No, that was everything. I can outline next steps for the committee, which is the next item on the agenda, if you would like.
Please, yes.
So basically where we're going from here, is what I'm hoping to do is to finalize the draft and then send that out to the committee for review. Obviously, there's not going to be a ton of changes based on the first draft that you saw. There's going to be some new names, and we're going to include some wording to cover these things that we've discussed today. And then we need to have it will be very short, meeting just to pass a motion that we can move or bring forward the report to council. So that I would expect that meeting would be 15 minutes, if that long. But it's really important, obviously, that we're all there so that we can actually pass the motion, because we need quorum for that. So a couple items up in the agenda, we're going to discuss meeting dates. So hopefully we can figure out a date that would work for everybody. My hope is that we can get this draft completed and presented to council in January, but that might be hefty. I'm not entirely sure. At least I'll have the draft to you by then, I would hope, and then we can get this motion because we need that, obviously. So maybe it's realistic to say end of January, early February.
I'm gonna have to revamp some of the numbers now since Mountain Lake's gone. So
okay,
I'm not gonna get that done until sometime in January.
Okay, so it's probably safer to say that we're going to have a draft to you in January, hopefully, and then we need to figure out a date, probably to meet later in January or early, probably later in January we'll aim for.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that the next meeting would simply be at the call of the chair?
Sure, yes.
All right. Anything else under next steps?
No, I think that's where we're at with this one.
Thank you, Sarah. I think on the naming issue, I'm looking forward to the proposal for Bucks Forest. All right. Is there any other business? Seeing none, the next meeting then will be at the call of the chair. And that leaves me with just one item left, a motion for adjournment. So that's moved by Councillor Gamble and seconded by?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, right?
Yes.
Yes, seconded by Kevin. I'm gathering there's no one opposed. Thank you all. Nice short meeting. And have a very Merry Christmas.
Merry
You as
Christmas.
well.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you all
Christmas,
see
everybody.
you all in the new year.
Bye.
Merry Christmas, everyone.